No, I don't think it's sustainable long term. I don't think it's something that can carry on indefinitely. I think it's something that will have to be solved sooner rather than later.
Hello everyone and welcome to another Premier Pundits podcast. Today we are covering Manchester United and I'm very glad to welcome Rob Dawson, who's ESPN correspondent for United, to talk to us today. Welcome, Rob. It's been a while since I've last spoke to you, but I really appreciate you giving up your time to join us today. How are things?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure, mate. Look, I'm going to cut to the chase. And obviously, we're going to be talking about the upcoming season. But before we do that, I want to have a look at just last season. And on the face of it, United finishing second, albeit behind, rival City, and reaching the Europa League final. Unfortunate to lose that on penalties. From looking back, is that considered a successful season for United? I mean, do we look back with a wry smile on the face and thinking, almost there? And is that a lot of positives to take from that?
Yeah, I mean, probably can't look at it as a successful season for United, but progress, I think. Certainly, finishing third the year before and then second. There was a hint of a title challenge around January and February that obviously didn't happen in the end, but they were there and thereabouts in the second half of the season. Obviously tailed off a little bit. It would have been an awful lot easier to call it a success if they'd won a trophy and won that penalty shootout. Obviously that didn't happen, which is a big disappointment and something they'll look to rectify with a first trophy under Solskjaer as quickly as possible. But yeah, perhaps not an out-and-out success, but progress nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, considering City obviously, had a tremendous season and they were eulogised throughout. I mean, United were only 12 points behind, and they were 5 points ahead of the previous champions, Liverpool. And as a Newcastle supporter, we would look upon that success as United has been a massive success. But in terms of where United need to go and where they need to be next season, what areas of that team or this squad do you think that Ollie needs to address?
Yeah, I mean, there are obviously areas that they need to strengthen. They've obviously signed Jadon Sancho to bolster that forward line, which I think is a good signing and value for money in the market. I think things will look an awful lot better for United fans if they sign Raphael Varane. They conceded far too many goals last year. They weren't great at set pieces either. It was a little bit of a thorn in the side. I think if Varane comes in, they look a lot more settled defensively, a lot more solid, should concede fewer goals. And hopefully that makes them more able to unleash the attacking talent that they do have, because, some of their attacking players are wonderful. And there are other clubs in the Premier League that would kill for an attacking lineup like that. So, yeah, another couple of additions to go with Jadon Sancho, and you'd like to think that they would be there or thereabouts to challenge City, Liverpool and Chelsea for the title next season.
Yeah, I mean, you touched upon a couple of points that I was going to bring up there. Firstly, defensively, I mean, United did concede 44 goals in the Premier League. That was more than Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, and of course, champions Manchester City. For you, in terms of, is it that centre-back spot really that's a key area to be, strengthened? There's, I know Axel Tuanzebe is he out of the club now? Is he a rumour to be going? And certainly Eric Bailey, if there is a bid to come in for him, he could be away. So is Varane, is he the player that can take the club onto the next level? And I've also seen United heavily linked with Kieran Trippier, who presumably would be cover on the right hand side, although I know he can't play on the left, for and Aaron Wan-Bissaka.
Yeah, I mean, I think Varane is the type of signing that would take United to a different level. It has been a little bit of a problem position for them. They need someone next to Maguire. Lindelof has had a good season 2 years ago, but wasn't as good last year and looked a little bit, just didn't look as comfortable as he has done. He's not particularly strong in the air, which hasn't helped him. And I think Varane is the type of player, because of his experience, the clubs he's been at, the things he's won, just it does take you to a different level. I think it's not just centre half that needs looked at. I think they probably need a holding midfield player at some point. But while United have got money to spend in the window, that the budget is not unlimited. And I think ideally Solskjaer would like Varane and maybe someone like Declan Rice, but between them, you're talking about the best part of 150 million, and having signed Jadon Sancho already, the money just isn't there. So someone like Rice may have to wait until next summer. But in terms of this summer, if they could sign Varane, even if they weren't to get anyone else, if they were to sign Varane, they've already got Sancho, that team would look an awful lot different, and there'd be an awful lot more positivity and optimism around Old Trafford than there perhaps has been heading into seasons previously.
Yeah, I mean, how much of a concern is the goalkeeping situation as well with Dean Henderson and David De Gea? And I know Ollie, flip-flopped a little bit towards the end of the campaign, and Dean Henderson said, he talked about his injuries that ultimately forced his withdrawal from the England squad, and it was the fact that he was competing so hard with David De Gea and pushing himself so hard and running through brick walls, as it were, that his body just finally broke down. He couldn't tolerate the demands of being pushed that hard. Ahead of the new season, did we think we would see a more settled number one? In which case, I mean, you wouldn't want goalkeepers to take their foot off the pedal, but also you need them to be able to train, and ultimately you need goalkeepers available, because if they're pushing themselves too hard all the time because they're constantly under the pressure of wondering, am I number one, or am I going to lose a place? That just isn't sustainable long term.
No, I don't think it's sustainable long term. I mean, I think Ollie last season enjoyed that competition between the two of them, that they were kind of pushing each other. But when you hear Dean Henderson say something like he had to work so hard to get into the team that his body just couldn't cope once he got into the team, I mean, that has to be a concern. And you only have to listen to someone like Gary Neville, one of the most experienced defenders that we've ever had in this country, say that as a defender, he would rather have a settled number one because it settles down the entire back four. They just want to know who the keeper is because it gives you a little bit of consistency. I think you have to listen to that kind of thing. As things stand, I mean, I don't think that Solskjaer's made a decision yet. There hasn't been a lot of interest in David De Gea. Dean Henderson is probably a bigger asset because of his age, his scope to improve and the wages that he's on. But as things stand, I mean, they'll both go into pre-season battling for the number one shirt again. I think what you may find is, because of the window extending beyond the season a little bit this summer, is that whoever gets picked for the first couple of games will be happy with that and obviously want to play. The person, whether it's David De Gea or Dean Henderson, who's left out, may look to exploit that last couple of weeks of the window and maybe find something else, because ultimately both of them want to be number one. They want to be number one at United and they want to be number one for their countries as well, and they need to be playing regular games. So I don't think it's something that can carry on indefinitely. I think it's something that will have to be solved sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Do you think the addition of Tom Heaton coming into the squad is possibly with one eye on that situation with regards to, maybe somebody coming in for David De Gea and him moving on? Do you think that would see Tom Heaton, move into that number two, backup keeper role?
It's certainly possible. And Tom Heaton, even though I think he's 35, will still want to play fairly regular games. I mean, he's not gone to United just to sit in the stands for 2 years. He's someone that was playing for England not that long ago. So he's certainly someone that could do that. I mean, I think the main reason he's been brought back to Old Trafford is Solskjaer wants to have an experienced core around the club. He's very aware that the core of the squad is quite young and need those older heads. It's the reason they've re-signed Juan Mata, they've kept Nemanja Matic. Obviously, they brought Tom Heaton in. So I think he's important in that regard. But certainly, he's not someone that's going to want to sit and just watch from the sidelines. And he's certainly someone that could be a number two if David De Gea or Dean Henderson decide, towards the end of the window that they need to move on.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed obviously the defensive frailties to an extent, but going forward offensively, United scored 73 goals last season. Only City scored more. Quite often, Ollie deployed a 4-2-3-1 formation, but there's a lot of talk now with regards to Paul Pogba's performances, say in the Euros, and how he is utilised under Didier Deschamps, and the possibility of Ollie, maybe allowing Paul a more free role, an opportunity to express himself, and all of his underlying stats in terms of his progressing runs, his dribbles, his attempted pass, his key pass, puts him in the high 80s and early 90s percentile of Europe's top leagues. So that's certainly where all his strengths lie. Is that something that you can maybe see happening for next season?
Yeah, definitely, and it's certainly conversations that Ollie has had with his coaching staff and the players that have come back to Carrington already. The basic idea is that he wants to get more attacking players in his team, and you're right what you say there, that last season his go-to system was two holding midfielders with a number 10, usually Bruno Fernandes in front, and then a front three around them. I think ideally he would like to have one holding midfielder, two number 8s, and then that front three. The players he's got in his squad suit that a lot better. You've got Paul Pogba, you've got Fernandes, you've got Donny van der Beek, who could all play in that sort of 8 role, and then obviously you've got the wingers and your forwards as well around that. The issue with that is that they haven't got an out-and-out holding midfielder who's going to play 60 games. They've got Fred, Scott McTominay, and Nemanja Matic. Now, Nemanja Matic is probably best suited to that role, but is getting to a point of his career where he can't cover the ground anymore because his legs aren't the same as they were when he was at Chelsea. Fred and Scott McTominay, both good players in their own right, and both had good seasons last year, but they're not out-and-out holding midfield players, and it's debatable whether they could do that job on their own without the other one sat next to them. And again, I think it goes back to Varane. Solskjaer last season had 2 holding midfield players because the core was a little bit soft. If you have Varane in there at centre-half next to Maguire, you can probably afford just to have one holding midfielder with 2 more forward-thinking midfielders in front of him. So, bring Varane in and it opens up a lot of possibilities for that. If he doesn't come in and they go into the season with Lindelof and Maguire, Bailly, maybe it's something that he'll have to revert back to. And, if there's a run of bad results, it would be very, very tough for him not to go back to that Fred and McTominay partnership in midfield, which I know that lots of United fans don't like, but in fairness, it's one that has been quite successful in some of the bigger games.
Yeah, I mean, from a lot of our audience, a lot of people who'll be watching this video will be, considering United's assets from an attacking perspective, and I'm looking at that United attack, and I'm thinking to myself, who the hell starts every week? We can assume that Bruno is going to be, in that maybe that 10 role potentially, and then are we saying Cavani is going to be? Is he going to lead the line? Probably more often than not. Then we're looking at, does Sancho come in? Does Greenwood keep his place? I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, we don't have to worry about Marcus Rashford for, probably the first couple of months of the season, but we're going to have Martial back to fitness. We've got Dan James, Pogba, potentially in that time, Van der Beek, who's had a summer off and that, and things didn't really work out for him in that first season. I mean, like I say, looking ahead to the new campaign, ideally, who do you think Ollie would want to be going for in that sort of, that front 3 or front 4?
Well, I mean, you've just outlined it there. He's got incredible options. Even with Marcus Rashford missing the first couple of weeks, you've still got Anthony Martial, you've got Cavani, Greenwood, Sancho, Van der Beek, Pogba, Fernandes. So he's got too many players there to fit into one team. I mean, that's obvious. I think there should be more opportunities for Van der Beek. I mean, they could have sold him if they wanted to, and they haven't. They obviously see something there. There was a reason why they paid £40 million for him last summer. They see a very good footballer who's had a year now in the Premier League, and they really expected him to kick on. Jadon Sancho, you would expect would start more often than not, given that he's cost the best part of 75 million. I think Cavani would be the first choice centre forward, but given his age, I don't think that he's going to be able to play 60-odd games, and it's likely that he will switch off with either Anthony Martial or Mason Greenwood. It's interesting, earlier in the summer, that a lot of the stuff that was coming out of United suggested that Solskjaer wanted to play Mason Greenwood as a centre forward more than he has done. Since he's broken into the team, he's really played on that right-hand side and obviously done very well and scored a lot of goals. But his record and his goals throughout the academy and the age group teams have all been as a centre forward. He's not had that much of an opportunity to play there for the first team, but you would expect with Sancho coming in to maybe fill that right-hand side of or right wing role that Greenwood would get more of a chance to play as a centre forward and just to see if he can do it in the Premier League. Yeah,
I mean, you did mention Van der Beek, and I suppose you look back in hindsight, it was a very disappointing first season, but we know that he withdrawn from the Netherlands squad due to a problematic groin issue that he said he had been carrying a while, and he wanted to take this time off during the summer to build up that fitness and remedy that problem. How much of an issue do you think that injury impacted on his time during the Premier League, or was that just something that happened, later on in the campaign and wasn't really to blame, maybe early doors?
No, I'm not sure it was to blame early doors. I think he came in. He probably expected to play a little bit more often than he did. I think Solskjaer maybe didn't think that he was up to speed as quickly as they would have liked. Not a criticism of Donny at all. I mean, it takes players, different times to adjust to a league that is an awful lot quicker than some of the football that Donny would have played in the past. I think it probably hampered him in the second half of the season, because there were games, particularly Europa League games, where you expected Van der Beek to play, and you were looking at the team sheet when it arrived and wondering why he wasn't involved. And Van der Beek coming out later and saying that he was carrying an injury all the way through the second half of the season makes more sense now, because there were some games where you just thought there's no reason why Van der Beek shouldn't be playing in this, that he has to, and he wasn't. And it makes more sense now if he was injured. So obviously disappointed for him that he's missed the Euros, but great news for United, because he's had the summer off. Hopefully he's recovered. He's obviously back in training. You'd expect him to play quite a central role in pre-season, given that lots of the squad will be late back after the Euros. So really he's got a great chance to hit the ground running, play, be first choice, play week in, week out for the first couple of weeks of the season, and really make that midfield position his own. Yeah, I agree.
And I suppose looking to the new season and looking, obviously United qualified for the Champions League, so it's going to be a big campaign ahead. Is Ollie still a man that should be at the wheel, and what do you think would represent a successful season for United?
Yeah, I mean, the first question, I think he is still the right man. I think he's done enough to be in the job. I think he's earned a lot of credit with the board, particularly with the way he's handled himself. I think that him and alongside the recruitment department have spent well under him, and it does feel like he is building something. But ultimately, though, it's Manchester United, and he has to be challenging for the Premier League title, and not just in January and February. It has to be in April and May. He has to get to the later rounds of the Champions League. He probably has to win something sooner rather than later. I know that he said last season that trophies, domestic cups, aren't necessarily a sign of progress, but really he has to win something and lift a trophy, because that's what the history of Manchester United is all about, and it would make his job an awful lot easier if he had that to fall back on. And it's going to be tough, because you said at the start of the video that the teams who are involved in the Premier League, City, Liverpool, Chelsea, these are huge massive European clubs who have all got the same ambitions, and only one team can win it. So it's going to be very tough, but Solskjaer knows better than anyone the expectations at Man United, and he will know that, particularly if they have a good summer, he gets the players in that he wants, he will be expected to really challenge for the title, because it's been a long time. They haven't challenged really or significantly since Sir Alex Ferguson left. It's been too long, really, and that has to be remedied, has to be changed, and probably this season.
Listen, fantastic insight, Rob. Before we go, one final question, and I'll not hold you to this. There'll be absolutely no comeback whatsoever. But if you were to name one United player to have a standout season in the upcoming campaign, for all of those fantasy owners out there who are looking for one United player, who would you nail your colours to?
It's not going to be particularly inventive, but Jadon Sancho. He's been fantastic at Dortmund. He should get the chance to play regularly and play a real key role in a position that he likes. The way that United are set up should bring the best out of him. I think everything is there for him to have a great season. Whether he can do it or not is a different matter, because obviously you forget that he's never actually played a Premier League game in his career yet, and it's going to be a new experience for him. But everything is there for him to have a great season. Brilliant.
Rob Dawson, ESPN correspondent for Manchester United. Thanks again, Rob, for giving up all your time. Fantastic insight. Really, really enjoyed having you on. And I'm sure everybody watching will have loved, what you've got to say, especially about Jadon Sancho. So if you have any comments, please pop them in the box below. We do read them, and we do try to reply as many as possible. But for now, that's the Manchester United preview done. And we'll see you again very soon with our next preview. Thanks and bye.